This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited Podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited Podcast. On this episode, we have an incredible guest. You certainly know him from Fantasy Cares and the SFB Podathon. He is now the fantasy football historian. It's the one and only Sal Leto. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, what's up, Kev? Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you, and I'm jealous looking at the intro of all the great people you interviewed with great backgrounds, and I have like a white wall on a couch. So, you know,
hey, the things that can come from that. I mean, you can do some pretty special things. So I'm excited to see everything that comes. Obviously excited to have you on. We plan to get together like earlier in the summer before your summer Scott Fish Bowl live tour. We just couldn't make it work, but this is a great time. Obviously kicking off the season. Thrilled to have you on, and of course, you know, we got to spend a lot of time together last month at the Expo, and now we're obviously going to get into your background, the story of your journey here in the fantasy space. But obviously, there's some new details that have come up with the fantasy football historian. Can you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, so fantasy football historian is an idea I actually came up with at least 8 years ago, if not more. And Scott Fish is probably the one person who could vouch for that outside of my former podcast host. I started playing fantasy football in the 90s, right? So over 30 years ago. And if there's one thing I know is that I know the history of these games. And I remember being there. And, you know, I never quite had the time and I never quite had the ability to make my content, but I had all the ideas. And then thought about it. There was a handful of people this summer on those tours and in those cities that I went to that really gave me the push and the conversations helped me go, you know what, I'm going to do it. I really want to do it. So I'm excited to bring that content.
I love it. Now we're going to get more into that in a bit. Obviously, we'll start with your background, just your passion for sports. We'll rewind a couple years back. When did it all begin for you? Your love for sports, and who were your favorite teams and players growing up across the whole sports spectrum?
Yeah, I love all sports, and I played all sports growing up. I was the youngest of three boys. I mean, I have a sister. She's the oldest of all of us. But the three boys, you know, we'd bang around a lot, mostly me and my oldest brother. So he's 4 years older than me. So I was into sports coming out of the womb, right? Because I was his tackle dummy. I was the one he would beat up on. He was always bigger than me growing up. And if you see us next to each other now, I'm bigger than him, which is fun for me all these years later. But I don't remember not loving sports, right? So in my life, I've always loved sports. And for me, generally following with what my older brother did. So Yankees was, you know, probably my first and earliest, you know, late 70s. I was born in 1974. So late 70s, they won 2 World Series. I don't know that I have a whole lot of memories of those. I do kind of remember them playing in a World Series in 81, but losing. And so, you know, loved the Yankees. Ricky Henderson was my favorite, probably my first favorite Yankee in the 80s. We all love Don Mattingly if you're a Yankee fan, right? But football, people ask me all the time, how were you born and raised in New York and become a Raiders fan? And I've always been a Raiders fan. And that goes back to my brother's first youth football team was the Raiders, the ICYP Raiders. And so he became a fan, and I kind of was on the fringe. And my earliest NFL memory is the 84 Super Bowl, the Raiders against the Washington then Redskins, and Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen was my first favorite NFL player. It's the beautiful run, like 191 yards rushing in that game, and one of the more memorable, you know, stop turns and up the middle runs. And then you see it almost all the time in highlights. And I've been a fan ever since. So I don't believe in jumping ship when times get tough, and they've been tough for decades. Now I was a Raiders fan. So, and I played a ton of hockey, grew up in hockey. You grew up on Long Island. They were winning Stanley Cups in the early 80s. So Mike Bossy was my favorite NHL hockey player on the Islanders at that time. And, you know, basketball, I don't have an allegiance to a New York team. I'm a Jordan era Bulls fan. I love Michael Jordan, probably my favorite athlete across any sport, any era, just the mentality and who and what he was. You know, that's my sports history.
Hey, I mean, MJ, I mean, you can't beat that. And I love when you bring up that Marcus Allen run, because I mean, it's one of the most beautiful runs in NFL history, obviously Super Bowl history, playoff history. Incredible stuff. You mentioned Don Mattingly. Like, that was my first favorite baseball player. It didn't last too long, but that's kind of the first days of baseball that I remember. It was Mattingly for sure. I was a lefty. He was a lefty. Like, let's go. My brother's favorite player was Wade Boggs. So we had a little rivalry. Both kids from Seattle, but for some reason, Seattle Mariners baseball was not too special in the mid 80s. So we gravitated what was hot on TV for sure. So when it comes to sports though, what was the biggest loss as a sports fan you've ever experienced?
Yeah. So you just brought it up, right? The Seattle Mariners. And so it had been so long since the Yankees had been in the playoffs and won a World Series and all that stuff. And sure enough, in 95, Ken Griffey Jr. comes around and rips our heart out. I mean, it was Edgar Martinez that got the hit and Griffey that came with the score. And so at that time, like I mentioned, I maybe kind of sort of remember them playing in the 81 World Series. So now we're 14 years later. I'm 21 years old at that time. And we're so close. And I remember I had my first apartment. I remember sitting there watching as that happened. And that had to be the toughest one I can remember watching. And I say that, remember the Yankees lost 4 straight to the Red Sox. The Red Sox, but we had already won some World Series at that time. So that is tough. And I consider myself an evolved sports fan. While I'll never root for the Red Sox, or I don't support the Red Sox, watching that when the Yankees were up 3-0 and the Red Sox coming back. And then if you've ever seen the ESPN 4 Days in October, one of the best sports documentaries you could ever watch. That city was that group of people, that group of fans, the history and decades and nearly century that had gone by that those people had put up with. You can't help but enjoy that moment, right? But easily for me, 95.
That's wild because, if you ask me one of my favorite moments of all time, obviously it's that one. As a Mariners fan, it was kind of the one glimpse of everything you want as a sports fan for us as Mariner fans. So it's also funny. I've done these interviews and I see where someone's worst moment is their favorite moment. For me, that was definitely one of my favorites. But when it comes to you, what's your all-time favorite sports moment?
And I can tell you this real quick. This was a great moment. So 2001, I believe, was the year that was that the year that Seattle won all the games and they were going to break the Yankees eliminated them. I was at the game where Bernie Williams hit a walk-off home run in the playoffs. To it wasn't the game that eliminated Seattle, but it was one of the games. I think the Yankees won 4-1. So I was there with my oldest brother. So this was right after 9/11, right? So for me, great moments of being there in the stadium. Let's go back to 94. My nephew, 1993. My nephew is 8 years old. I'm 20, and it's August 5th. My birthday is August 6th. And Blue Jays are the defending World Series champions. The Yankees are good for the first time in a long time. And they're playing each other Thursday, 1 o'clock game. And I'm at work. I worked at a cemetery at the time, right in the summer times, right out of high school. And I'm sitting there at like 8 a.m. at breakfast with one of my coworkers. It was a friend of mine. I'm like, boy, I'd love to be at this game today. He's like, well, why aren't you going? Like, what are you doing here? So I'm like, that makes sense. A lot of times my work ethic was always good. And even though I was 20 and I wasn't giving my career job, I was dedicated to showing up and working. I left. I went and got my nephew. We drove into Yankee Stadium and it was sold out. And these days, there was no StubHub. There was no, right? You bought the tickets off the street from people, right? You had to take the tickets. There weren't even people selling on the street, or they were, but they were sold out, right? So my nephew breaks into tears. He's crying. Police officer comes up and asks me, is everything okay? What's going on? He says I'm young and my nephew's even younger. I explained the story to him. He goes, hold on a minute. And he walks us over to the bleachers. If you'd ever been to Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium, the real Yankee Stadium. And he said, go, don't look at my name. Don't look at my badge. Don't acknowledge me. Go. And I was like, holy shit. We went into the bleachers that day. As we're walking in, Mattingly's hitting a home run. Paul only hit a home run. You could go back and look up the stats for that day, because when I've told this story recently, my son's like, how do you remember that? Because to me, like, just the greatest moment in the stadium, you felt old Yankee Stadium move. It shook. And it had been so long. It was sold out capacity. And they won that game. I want to say, I think it was 4-2. Jimmy Key may have been pitching that day, which – they had all the makings of a great memory. So, that Yankees winning the World Series in 96 finally, a lot of Yankee memories for me. The Raiders ones go back to when I was very young. So celebrating them wasn't as much as it is now. It was nice to see them make it to the Super Bowl in the early 2000s. It was horrendous to watch them get throttled in a game where, the history of that game has been spoken about. I even spoke to Warren Sapp himself about that game in 2023. And his words to me as he slapped me on my chest with his big paw was, "You would never win that game, baby." We had 4 first ballot Hall of Famers on defense. So, just I love sports, man. Everything about
I love it. I love it. It makes sense with some of his historian stuff you're doing. So obviously, when it comes to fantasy sports, when did you fall in love with the game? When did you discover it?
Yes, so a lot of the same era we're going to talk about in the 90s. So 1992 was the year I graduated high school, and that was the first summer I worked in that cemetery. I spent 4 years in that cemetery. And I used to get some time in the truck, I got on the trees. And for all those people who think it's weird, when you work in a cemetery, after a while, it becomes like being in a park every day. Like, I understand the significance of what it is, but it was nice because I was literally working in like a park. So when we would take breaks, you'd sit under a tree. And I remember reading the New York Daily News, and in the back of the New York Daily News, there was this thing called fantasy football. And you basically went in and picked from a group of players, and you had to mail that slip in. You had to cut it out, fill out your players, mail it in. And then you could make, I think, during the season, like 3 changes to your lineup. But you had to call a toll-free phone number to do that.
Yeah.
So I played that for 2 years, 92, 93. And summer of 94, I went to a party in New Jersey for a cousin of mine who had graduated chiropractic school. And they were older than me. They're about 10 to 12 years older than me. And I had known them, obviously, they're my cousin, but we weren't super close. And we got to talking, and I was talking about, and it was South Jersey and Philly people. So, like Eagles and the Flyers and that stuff. And my cousin French, we called him French, even his name was Doug. He married into the family or Francois, so we called him French. And he said, "Donnie's got an actual league. We played, we did a real league last year. You got to come join the league." And I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" So he tells me, the live draft, we did the whole thing back then with draft boards, like in early stages. And I drove to South Jersey, my then girlfriend at the time. If you watch today's historian, I talked about the girlfriend I had when I made my first fantasy football pick in 1994. And I picked Dan Marino because it was her favorite player. And I was immediately hooked. Like, that room of people, the characters that were in that room that I remember so vividly. They didn't stay in the league, all of them for long. There was a core 4 or 5 of us that remained. And I knew immediately I loved fantasy football. And 2 years later, I created maybe it was 98, maybe it was about 4 years later. I created my own league with a group of friends on Long Island. And that didn't last as long as the original South Jersey Fantasy Football League, which went to 2020, COVID year. Just, they were older than me. Like I said, COVID brought upon some issues with some people. They were a little bit older, into the 60s. And, not to be a downer, but we did lose one of my cousins at the beginning of COVID, who had fought cancer for a while. And that was Doug's wife, my cousin Janet, who was the backbone of draft day. She was the backbone of the food and preparing and doing stuff. And it wasn't the same, and it was never going to be the same. So we never played that league again after 2020. But I will tell you this, pen and paper league that never changed pen and paper. It never one day went online. And we always used the New York Daily News as our scoring. So it wasn't for many years till I went and played some online fantasy football. And, the rest is history after that, and meeting you and people in this industry and the many leagues, the insane leagues that John Bosch has gotten me into. I've traveled every which way in fantasy sports, but it goes back to 1994, my first home league, and 26 years that league went on for me.
That's fantastic. Is there one league in today's world where that's like your favorite league, the one that means the most to you?
Yeah, so yes, there's a few. Anything related to falafel, and I know we're going to talk about falafel in a minute. It's, for those who don't know, it's not the food, it's Fantasy Life at Fantasy Football League. And that was created on the Fantasy Life app in 2015. That league we draft on Labor Day every year, and it's a 16-teamer. And the reason why that one's so near and dear to me is because that's how my fantasy football content career did start. We'll get to that in a minute. But just a group of guys and now a lady who's in the league who have stuck together all these years. And it was in a time in my life where life wasn't in a great place for me, and it was kind of like an escape. My marriage had started to fall apart around 2013, and by that time in 2015, I was still living home. We were home separated, and I had all this free time, and I discovered the Fantasy Life app, and it was a great escape for me. And the reality is, I think my fantasy football content was born out of the fact that I had this void to fill. Now that something that had been in my life for 25 years was going away, from the time I had started to date my ex-wife to engaged to married. And by the way, that was the girlfriend who made me pick Amarino and is the mother of my 3 children. So the FLAFFL League, it will always be very important to me. I'm in a Long Island. It's called Greetings from Long Island. I commissioned that league with Jared Barry, JB, Coach JB. And that was born out of a bunch of guys who met at a live Scott Fishbowl draft from Long Island. So that one's important now because I think we're in like year 4 of that one. And my best friend in the world, he's been in the league for like 20 years, and somebody dropped out 6 years ago, and he invited me, and that's the live in-person at the house home draft that I do now. I just did that one on Labor Day also. I had 2 on Labor Day. And that's a great group of guys. A league where really everybody knows what they're doing. It's competitive, a good group of shit talkers in person. And so I have a bunch that are really near and dear to me.
Nice. Now, thinking back all the fantasy you played over time, who's your biggest rival? Who's the one person that when you beat them that meant the most? If you lost to them, it hurt the most?
Easily my cousin Donald, who was the commissioner of that first league, because Donald is a human character. Like, Donald is a mountain of a human, size-wise and personality-wise. And Donald was a minor league hockey player when he was a kid. I don't know if you remember Jimmy Dowd, played for the New Jersey Devils. He was Jimmy Dowd's protector in the the leagues. Right? He was a goon.
Wow.
He basically was the guy who beat people up. So Jimmy Dowd, who wasn't a very big guy, but was safe. And he took that mentality into life. So he was in your face. It was his way or the highway. Rule changes. There was no democracy in the South Jersey Fantasy Football League. There was Donald's word. And if you didn't like it, you can leave. But all that made him who he was. Like, he was so is. I mean, he's still with us, but we don't play in that league anymore. And beating him, and the first time I beat him and Doug, and Donald's friend Craig, the 3 of them were like my guys that I looked up to in fantasy football back then. So anytime I beat one of the 3 of them, it was amazing. We called them the Holy Trinity.
I love it.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Now, when it comes to just consuming content and getting more, becoming more aware of the fantasy industry as it was back in the day, do you remember analysts, experts that you discovered earlier on that you can think back to those days?
Yeah, obviously the first one that comes to mind is Matthew Berry, right? And everybody knows the Matthew Berry that's around today, but you and I remember talented Mr. Roto. We remember those early days. I mean, the real early days of internet, dial-up internet. Matthew was always there. John Hansen was another guy that was always there. Like, these guys have stood the test of time. I know Hansen has taken a little bit of a step back in recent years, but he's still an owner of, I think, a couple of companies and doing work. And Matthew, I know you've interviewed, and I'm sure he's told you the same thing. He was my first big interview back in 2016. And his best description is he's the Martha Stewart of fantasy football, right? He is that. He's become that. And even more so now. And he's given so many people I've seen come up through the years who are at Fantasy Life now in his venture. I think it's amazing the opportunities given to men and women in this industry. It's fun to watch. But those guys, Fanball, interesting for me was Fanball was a site I remember. I used to buy the newspapers. Right back then we had a Fantasy Football Weekly newspaper that would come out like Wednesday. We had Pro Football Weekly. And Fanball used to do like a full page or a half page ad in there. And fast forward all these years later to get to know Paul Charchian and actually get the opportunity to write blurbs on the Fanball website when it came back around in like 2018, 2019. That was like a dream come true for me, right? So those are a lot of the early on people. And I'm going to do a game next week, and I'll talk about it now, from 1999, Giants and Washington. And it's a Stephen Davis game. And I found out in Pro Football Weekly in the tidbits, whispers, or whatever thing, right after the South Jersey Fantasy Football Draft, Stephen Davis was taking that job, not Skip Hicks. So I immediately made the phone call, because you had the call ad drops, and I picked up Stephen Davis, and he scored 17 touchdowns that year. And that's how you get your information back then. You didn't pick your phone up. You didn't look anything up. You had to dig through newspaper.
Yeah, do the work back then for sure. Now, I would say that we talk about some of the the old school people in this space and pioneers, obviously, game changing, trailblazers for sure. And we've seen a lot of people come into the industry, especially the last few years. And I think a lot of people are going to think of you today as the Podathon and just huge community ambassador for the sport, but they might not even know, or for the game, they might not even know about FLAFFL House. Let's talk about that, getting into content creation, the origin of FLAFFL House, and where that went for you.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. I'm like, these kids don't know. These kids don't know about that back in the day, right? So, we touched on how I ended up on the Fantasy Life app, and it was just at a beta stage at that time. And Steve Marcus, who became one of my co-hosts on the FLAFFL House podcast, he had posted a post on the main page, and he was looking for 16 people who were really good at fantasy football, knew how to play, and we're going to create this 16-team league. And we did that, and none of us knew each other. It was 16 men who didn't have any prior. We lived all around the country. 2 guys were in the Navy and were outside of the country, and we had a group chat on the Fantasy Life app. And the Fantasy Life app is now Bleacher Nation something. I don't think it exists how it is. But back then, it was so amazing. It really was so good. But anyway, we had this group chat, which we thought was a league chat, and we would start to get to know each other, and we'd be in there every day talking. And one morning, we were going back and forth, and we were ribbing each other. Right away, you could see it was a good group that could take the ribbing and got along. And somebody who was not in the league goes, "Hey, I don't know who you guys are, but I've been following along all morning, and you've been entertaining me. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." We're like, wait a second, this is open to random people. So I'm going to give you a quick long and short of the next 365 days. That chat organically grew to 15,000 people.
Wow.
15,000 people. The app creators who helped create that with Matthew Berry, Mark and Charlie, told us over 365 days, we averaged a message a minute the entire year. That's how busy it was around the clock. And as we started getting busier in 2015, we created people wanted to do they wanted to be in the FLAFFL League because it was the biggest league on the app. So we created the tier system, right? We created like a European or an English Premier League football. We had the 16 team, the 14 team, and the 12 team. So FLAFFL Junior, FLAFFL Embryo, and we saw under some attention. So this company, Prize Picks, reached out to us. Prize Picks had just won the Los Angeles Dodgers contest for small business tech, whatever it was. Prize Pick reached out. They wanted to interview us about the league. So they interviewed us about the league, and we said, 5 of us, me, Steve, Kevin, Brandon, and Ryan said, "Hey, do you guys have anybody writing content for your site?" So they're like, "No." Did I say Prize Picks? It was Side Prize.
Side
Prize. They're Prize Picks now. That's my point. They were Side Prize at the beginning. Now they're Prize Picks. So they're like, "No." We said, "We'll write for you for free." So for the first year in 2015, we would write 1 article a day. There was 5 of us. So Monday through Friday, one of us would do an article. I think I did based on Matthew Berry's, love, hate. I did Sink or Swim was my original article. And we started to write for them. And right after the season ended, Steve and Kevin were like, why don't we do a podcast? So 2016, nobody's doing podcasts, Kevin. Right? There's the football guys who are like brand new. There's, the fantasy football rather. Fantasy footballers who are like brand new. There's football guys. There's the 01. What the hell was Matthew Berry's? The 016?
06010. Yeah.
And there's very few. There's, like very few people doing. So we decided we're going to do one, right? And we're terrible. We're absolutely terrible. But we're doing our reps. We're getting our reps in. And Matthew, I think it was episode 5 or 6, agreed to come on. Matthew from the start was like, I love what you guys do for the app. Thank you. So gracious. He popped into the FLAFFL chat on Christmas Day. People went like insane. And we started podcasting. We started getting our reps in, and we started to really hit our stride in 2017. And Mike Wright came on. Liz Loza came on. Scott Fish came on. Matt Harmon. People were in the beginnings of their careers as well. But they were so gracious to come on with us. And Draft, you remember Draft app, which ended up selling to FanDuel? Yeah. They reached out to us and they want to sponsor the show. We're like, yeah, all right, great. Affiliation sponsorships. Like, no, tell us the number and we'll pay you per episode. And we're like, whoa. So we gave a number. We're like, damn it, they accepted it right away. You know, those things. So like 2017, 2018, I go back and listen to some of those shows. And I say this, like, a lot of people don't know Kevin and Steven, right? But they got busy with life and children and younger children. My children were older. And if I want to go back to people that were influences in what I do today, how I got here, it's those two guys, because they mean nothing to anybody in the fantasy football space at this point in their lives, but they helped me get my start. Those are the guys who every week I sat down with 3 times a week. We recorded shows. We showed up. Doesn't matter how many people were listening. Doesn't matter how good we were. They showed up every week, and they helped me get to a point that I'm at now. But we did get somewhere. In those early days, the FLAFFL House podcast was actually a really popular show. I go back and listen to how good we had gotten by year 2 and 3, the reps and the repetitions that we got. And I miss those days. Like, I miss those guys. I miss those days. I understand life happens and I had to move on. But they helped me grow the Podathon. You know, the Podathon was my idea. I brought it to them and we grew from there. And we could spill over to that in a minute. But that's how I really started in fantasy football content. I had a void in my life. Free time. My kids were like teenagers now and really social and doing their own thing. I was like, oh, the old man's got nothing to do. Let me go sit in the basement and talk to my internet buddies, you know?
I love it. No, it was good times back then. I remember it like it was yesterday, but it also feels like it was forever ago. Obviously, you said that kind of tied into the SFB Podathon. Well, yeah, what was it that inspired the SFB Podathon? And talk about that. Talk about the evolution of the Podathon and obviously, you know, got a lot of help along the way in recent years. Talk about the SFB Podathon.
Yeah, so 2016, I came across the ad for Scott Fish Bowl. You know, it was SFB 480, and I've told this, you know, story many times. Back then, it was SFB and then the number of teams that were in it. So it was 480 teams that year. And I think the following year, which I think it was SFB 6, I think the following year it became SFB 7. And then the numbers started. But I'd become aware of Scott. He had come on a show. He'd become a friend. Scott loved our show, and that made us feel great. Like, I feel like he was one of the first people that like legitimized us. He like loved what we were doing. He appreciated the humor. Like, we weren't a straight statistics drone on boring show. I for one would say random things that would throw Steve and Kevin off, and I love that. I love the spontaneity of their, you know, not shock jock so much. I wasn't like that, but I would shock them. And
yeah.
So we joined. I said, Steve, Kev, join the Scott Fish Bowl. This is going to be great for networking. So over to 2016, 2017, we became friendly with Scott, and we would end our show with, you know, make a charity donation, do something charitable through fantasy football. And that was based on the message of Scott Fish. And I remember thinking Tim Duncan was retiring. Maybe it was 2017. And Tim Duncan's retirement and the Scott Fish Bowl were trending equal on Twitter. And I'm like, well, this thing is huge. It's bigger than we realize. And I said to Kevin and Steve, next year, 2018, we got to do like a 1 to 2 hour show when the live drafts kick off, because back then, all online, all kicked off the Monday after 4th of July, all at, I believe, 11 a.m. East Coast time. One draft time, everybody went out into space. So I said, we'll do a show from 10 to 12. We'll lead up to the drafts. We'll do the first hour of the drafts. It'll be great. They're like, cool. And as the year went by, I'm like, nah, we have to do more. And I remember telethons, you know, the Jerry Lewis telethon and the telethons growing up. I'm like, I don't know what the hell a podathon is, but let's do a podathon. And I think people do credit me with that term, podathon. Like, I've kind of coined the phrase Podathon. Other people have used it, but I may have been the first, or at least the first one that brought it to the forefront. And we would do a 24-hour show, interview people, and our shtick was we'll be awake for 24 hours. So if we stay awake for 24 hours, like the people that climb up on billboards and do absolutely useless stuff to get attention and try and raise money, we're going to do that. And we did it, and we had to beg people to come on. But I will tell you, year one, Matthew Berry was on, Mike Wright was on, Liz Loza was on, Matt Harmon was on, Scott was on, and then we filled the voids with other people. And we raised like $4,700, and I was proud of that. And year two, we sent that money off to Scott. And year two, we had a few more people. We were a little bit better. We raised like $7,600. And Scott said, hold on to the money and you go do shopping in your city this year in the name of Fantasy Cares. And Fantasy Cares wasn't a 501c3 yet. It was a phrase, not a real entity. And that was the first year I did Toys for Tots shopping in New York on Long Island. And, Kevin, when I started SFB Podathon, I thought maybe by year 5, this thing would take off. Well, I don't know what happened in year 3. I don't, because it exploded. It exploded in 2020, and obviously COVID year. It exploded to the tune of $42,000 raised. It was $7,600 to $42,000. And I was like, wow. And also, we had so many people that wanted to come on that we had to now do 30-minute segments, right? I was trying to fill 24 one-hour segments. Now I had 48 30-minute segments, and I had people begging to come on. I had the idea of sponsors. Let's get a sponsor. $100 an hour to sponsor. The money goes straight to charity. I've never taken a dime from anything we've raised on a Podathon. That's not the spirit of Fantasy Cares. That's not what we're doing. So, amazingly enough, we raised 42. The following year, like 44. The following year, like 50. And John Bosch and I are like, "Hey, Scott, you gotta make this thing a 501c3." Like, like we were collecting the money in different ways, and it was, there was some concerns, So the 501c3 was born. I don't think I'm telling a tale outside of school now to say, Bob Gilchrist, who was really a legitimate backbone to what that organization is. He said to me when they went to get the 501c3, they really didn't quite understand what we were and what we're doing. And when they brought up a telethon style show, it put it over the top. And that made me feel amazing because I'm doing a fraction of what Fantasy Cares is. It's a part, but it's a fraction. And to know that my idea, my creation, and that dedication helped to put Fantasy Cares over the top to get that designation as a 501c3, what an honor and a privilege to have that on my my resume.
Well, amazing. Think about all the things Fantasy Cares is doing these days. It's definitely a cool thing to have on your resume for sure. And the impact that Fantasy Cares has had on this industry and this community has been massive. For you, what's been the most rewarding part of your experience in the fantasy community, and how have the relationships that you've made impacted you over the years?
Yeah, no doubt. It is, the combination of the Podathon and Fantasy Cares, right? I mean, how could you not just be so appreciative to be a part of the biggest charity in fantasy sports? I mean, a lot of other people are doing great things, and that's the beauty of Fantasy Cares is we don't want to dominate the space. We want to, help you grow your grassroots program, and that is something, again, Scott has always been a part of. So the men and women, the people that I've met through Fantasy Cares, through the Podathon, through the SFB lives, just getting to know people. When I say touching people, both here and being able to put your arm around somebody, and I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago, and like a legitimately different person. Some people, my own children will say to me, like, what was it that changed? It's like, I was always working hard, trying to provide, and I'm stressed. I was always stressed. Like, it wasn't easy to raise a family on Long Island. It was expensive, but that's where we were born, and that's where we were raising our kids. And I had just grown up, and I sat one day and I was like, oh, I don't have to be stressed. I don't have to have this anger inside. I don't have to have all this stuff. I can control that. I matured. I tell people in my 40s, I learned more in my 40s than I did the 40 years I was on earth prior to that, right? I'm 51 now, and I continue to learn and grow, and growth mindset. So fantasy football, the fantasy community helped me. I mean, that's a huge part of my character development as a human being. So that's the biggest and most important thing that's ever come out of fantasy for me.
I mean, it's amazing. It's powerful. I love that story for you. Obviously, you mentioned SFB live events, getting out there, touching grass, meeting people. You've had the Sal Leto World Tour the last couple of years, hitting a lot of different SFB events. Talk about the SFB lives. Obviously, each city's different. You probably had some unique experiences and moments from your tours.
I have had some really unique and wonderful moments on my tours. So, one thing I didn't do a lot in life and in my 40s was travel, and when I was working so hard and the kids, and we were providing, we did trips with the kids, and those were amazing. And I look back when I was like, you know what, I have this time now. My children are 20, 24, and 25. So like they're doing their thing. So I was on the Podathon, and it was coming to an end, and we were talking about Cincinnati Live, which was a few days later. And John Bosch, I had cracked open a beer to celebrate the end of the Podathon, and the moment was there. I'm like, you know what? I booked the flight in the last hour of the Podathon in 2024, and the day after 4th of July, on that Friday, 5th of July, I flew to Cincinnati. And the minute I got there, the welcome mat was rolled out by John. John is a great human being. He's a sweaty nightmare, but he's a great person. And if you guys don't know, I have broken John's chops for 10 plus years. It's a joy of mine. I love the man. His heart is as big as his giant head. But anyway, as soon as I met people in Cincinnati, and what a group of people in Cincinnati, people, content creators, fans, people, an amazing group. I was in love with the idea of going to cities and meeting people. I'm like, I have to do the minute I want to have to do this more. And so I knew I was going to go to the gala, right? They were going to do the gala in Boston last year. It was the first time. And so I booked my trip to do that. Of course, I always do the New York Live every year. So I had gotten to those, and I had for years wanted to go to the expo. So I hadn't gone. So the expo is usually a month out after the Podathon, and there's all this wonderful feeling after. And I had never make it there to see the people and meet the people who want to buy me a drink and thank me for all the stuff. So 2024, I traveled to those 3 locations, and it was amazing. And I was like, you know what, I got to do more in 2025. And I took on this role of doing like live auctioning of prizes and stuff in the locations when and if it's needed and wanted. I was like, let me start going to cities I haven't been to. So I've been to Vegas a handful of times, but I wanted to do the Vegas SFB. I had never been to Circa. And so first one this year was Vegas Circa, and man, is that a different animal from everything else. And I've talked to some people about this, and I've talked to Bob, and I talked to Scott, and it's a thing we're kind of kicking around, and that's doing like SFB the weekend. A standalone weekend in Vegas, a week before the rest of the draft start, not competing with anything else in the country, like mid-June, like June 13th, 14th, and just having Friday, Saturday, Sunday activities, and around the idea of, the Scott Fishbowl and the camaraderie of the whole thing. Because, I mean, I got some friends that I had met before there, including Laquan and Sam Holt, and, I've had drinks with them in LA, but to see them again in that atmosphere and to get to spend time with Liz Loza. Liz is one of the first people I interviewed. So I know Liz through the interview scene like 10 years, but what a great, fun human. If you never spent time with Liz Loza, she is a ball of energy, a little ball of energy, but so fun. And Liz is one of those people, who asked me, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a content creator? And she got that idea going in my head. And that was the first person on the tour this summer that was like, maybe now is the time, like maybe so. Joey Wright, I had met at the expo last year, but I got to spend maybe 3 different cities worth of time with Joey, and what another like just ball of goodness Joey Wright is. So getting to spend time and getting to know him this year was great. And as I went to these cities, Steve Johnson, so I went to Chicago. That's where not the gala so much, but that same mentality was there. 9 drafts at the same time in an old Italian restaurant. What a scene! Like, to your point about each city being different. So I did that, and I did New York again, and I did Philadelphia. I jumped on a train to Philadelphia, and again, a smaller venue and a brewery. But when I walked in, some of the people like, I didn't know you were coming. This is great. So like, people are making me feel like I matter. Like that's amazing. Wanted to take pictures with me. I signed my first autograph at
nice.
the Philadelphia SFB, and I was like, really? You want me to stop? It's an honor, but you're doing the worldwide book tour yourself now, so you're signing books and you're doing that stuff, and you were the commissioner of the year, so I'm sure you've done that. But that was the first time for me,
That's
and
awesome.
It was cool, So that the experience and the people is, again, I'll go back to that every time.
I love it. Well, you do matter, Sal, and you bring up some great people. Yeah, Joey, phenomenal. What an amazing person. Liz is incredible. Such a cool thing. And I remember the end of that Podathon when all that happened. Okay, I'm going to go to Cincinnati. You're going to host me? I remember all that. That was great. It was great. And yeah, you brought your stardom to the Fantasy Football Expo, which has been so much fun the last couple of years. Love, hanging out with you at the expo. Yeah. It's been great. Obviously, through this experience, through these years in this space, you've seen a lot of different angles of it. What advice do you have for people that want to get more involved in the community, get involved in content creation?
Be authentic, right? I think I think why falafel became popular back then and successful was we were 3 guys who loved talking fantasy football. We didn't put on fake voices like, this is my dumb accent. Like, this is what I sound like. But I'm not going to come out and give you one of these because I just don't like that, right?
Yeah.
We were just real. We had a Boston guy. We had a New York guy. We had a California guy. So the dynamic was great. And I've always remained true to myself. So I think be authentic. Find a niche, right? Part of the reason I kind of got out of podcasting was I got a little bit busy as I took on my full-time, I work as a hospital administrator in my full-time real job.
Yeah.
And as that part of my career expanded, I just didn't have as much time. Right. Yeah. And smart thing is go where the money is. And the money was there. So I did that. And so I find something somebody's not doing and don't give up on it too quickly. The Historian is an idea I had for 8 years, and I just started producing content Monday, right? So find your spot, find your honey hole, find your people. This community is welcoming. This community wants to see others succeed. Find your group of people to support you. Find your Kevin and Steve that are going to be late at night, and you're in your garage, and who knows what room. Kevin used to podcast from his bathtub. Like this stuff that we did, but find your voice, find your people, and don't be affected by change. Be yourself.
I love it. And with this fantasy football historian thing, I mean, I absolutely love it. It's something that, I love the nostalgia of sports. I love reminiscing on old memories, especially in fantasy. I love being reminded of a Stephen Davis, right? Or a Ben Coates. Like, you bringing up names. And I'm so excited every day. I want to see what you come up with. You're taking on a lot, though. Obviously, you're doing these clips, and I can tell, I've edited a few videos here and there and done some of these short videos, and it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot you're putting into those clips. I love seeing some of the old footage in there. Like, it's really cool what you're doing. Talk about your plans with this new brand and the process that you're going through to create this content.
Yeah, and as you can hear in the background, I live across the street from the hospital I work at. So you hear fire trucks and ambulances. Welcome to New York, everybody. It's nonstop. But obviously, I'm not super technological. I'm actually really good with a phone and that technology, but I'm not computer savvy. I didn't grow up on computers. I was a blue collar worker, so for the longest time before I switched to admin work. So to learn all this stuff, I feel like I pick things up quick, but sometimes I'm afraid to take the leap. But I said, you know what? I want to do this. I could have brought this idea to any one of the people in the fantasy football industry that I know. There's people that have come to me and told me, if you want to do something, come to us, we'll support it. But I wanted this to be my brand. I wanted this to be identified with me. And if somebody down the road decides, hey, come be a part of us, it'll already be established as mine, and we can do that together. And I'm open to that. It's got to develop and go from there. But I'm like, one thing I know is nobody's doing history, fantasy football history, content like this. So I'm old school in the sense that I'll just pick a week, pick a year, and I go to fantasy football. I go to football database rather, and I just go through the games. I literally pull up every game for that week, and I'm like, what was the highest scoring game in that week? Let me go dig into it. Now, not every time in those highest scoring games do you end up with amazing fantasy performances, right? So you might have to look around a little bit. I've been fortunate so far to find ones that, man, I do remember. Like when I dig into them, like, who doesn't remember Arian Foster? I picked him in the South Jersey Fantasy Football League that year. I had Arian Foster, and for him to explode in that first game, for them to hand him the ball 33 times, they don't do that anymore. So the process is find the game, look at the statistics, go watch the film. If you can't just do it off statistics, you got to go back and watch the film. You got to look for the outside stories because there's stories in these games, right? I could go back to tomorrow is Eagles. I don't know when this gets released, but we're recording the day before the NFL kickoff, and it's the Eagles-Cowboys opening night. Well, Thursday's game is going to be the last time the Eagles and Cowboys played each other on opening day, which, believe it or not, was 25 years ago, 2000, the end of the Cowboy dynasty. And, if I tell a story of that game where, hey, Troy Aikman's stats were 0 for 5 with a pick 6, but I don't tell you that he left the game with a concussion, you don't realize that was the end of his career. Like, he struggled through 2000, but didn't play anymore after that. Like, you can't tell the story with statistics. You got to tell the story with the events and what happened to him. And by the way, they signed Joey Galloway to replace Michael Irvin, who just retired, and he tore his ACL in the first game they played. You have to put that in there. And the story is called the Pickle Juice game because if you don't know, it was 130 degrees in Dallas that day, and their trainer put Philadelphia's guys on pickle juice as a way to recover it. So all those stories are all that's involved in a story. And I don't mind telling it here because by the time we release this, I'll have released that. So I want to find the stories. I want to tell the stories. I don't want to tell stats. I don't want to tell statistics. I want to tell history. I want to bring you there. I want to feel the vibe. And so find a game, find the stats, watch the film, find the stories, write the script. I got to write the script. I got to make sure that the statistics are accurate. And then I polish it up. Then I got to record it.
Yeah.
I slap the script into a teleprompter. I put that on my iPod. How old am I? On my iPad, and it's got to be one take, Kevin. Right? So you're not editing those together. It's got to be one take for it to have that authentic drive. Yeah. So my son told me at some point I should release the outtakes because I curse, I punch.
I love it.
But Saturday is going to be my recording day. All week I write the scripts. Saturday I record. Saturday I edit, and then I start releasing on Monday. And I was on the draft-a-thon. I don't know if you're on that draft-a-thon with Big Draft Energy last week. And I was on with Greg Kellogg. He said, "Are you going to do video?" And I was like, Greg, I'm doing this by myself, and it's already a lot. It's a lot of my time. And I'm like, he's right. Like the video and the still pictures, and so I dug back into the apps and how do I do this? And I think I've produced pretty good content. I had somebody reach out to me and say, "Who's producing your content?" I told them I do all this, and they're like, "Well, what you're putting out there looks really good. Like, it looks good." So I think it'll get better. Same thing as when I first podcasted, repetitions. Sure. And I've asked people for advice. I reached out to people in the industry who could give me advice. I reached out to people in my life who don't like football. Would this engage you if you came across something? And they did. And I happen to have the luxury of a 24-year-old son and all of his 20-something-year-old friends who love it. And they're like, "Oh, my God, I love this." And, you know me, I do the drinking winks. One of his friends sent him a screenshot. He said to me before. It said, "What's the drinking wink guy doing on my For You page on TikTok?" So I tested it with people of different backgrounds, of different ages, and in different industries. and I haven't gotten a bad vibe back from anybody. So,
yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, the passion you have, the excitement you have, the presentation looks great. I'm again, like I said, I'm just thrilled because like I said, I love the nostalgia. I love these moments. There's so many things you can do, but you're doing it such a unique way where you have multiple layers and you're doing some personal anecdotes in there. But again, hitting with another layer. I think it's done. And then you mentioned a couple other players. Like, I love all of that. I think it's just obviously it's going to evolve over time and it might change here or there. But it's a phenomenal start. And again, I think it's something that is so catchy and people will look forward to. It's evergreen. People that love fantasy football, they're going to want their memories jogged with this kind of stuff. And you can go back a year, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years. Like, there's just so much out there, but it takes a lot to create it. And hats off to you for putting this together. But I really think it's something that once it gets going, I think that, I mean, you are the fantasy football historian. It's going to be fun too, also at these live events. I mean, people are going to want to tell stories and talk about these games and everything. Yes. So love every part of it. It's so cool.
Yeah. And the idea, Kev, is to, as you know, when the off season comes and we, we're not in weekly content, is to do off season podcast, roundtable podcast, right? So analysts from different eras, people say era, I say era, I don't know. Getting together and hammering out who's the best. Was it LaDainian Tomlinson, or was it Priest Holmes, or is it Todd Gurley for his flip on the screen? Like, there's these guys, and the running backs are the most interesting because when you go back and look at it, it's like, oh my God, they had this amazing 3 years, and then they're gone, right? Yeah. Or Quentin Griffin, day one, right? You love that reference. He had an amazing week, week, and he was gone after that. Like, those are the stories you got to tell. Like the one hit wonders, the touchdown vultures, the MB3s, the Barbarian, like
Marion Barber.
So many guys I know in this head of mine, like this big bald head of mine, and I want to tell the stories about all of them. I've had so much fun creating it, right? Then seeing the comments, I've screenshot the comments and I've reposted some of them, and I think I'm going to do a thank you video this weekend and put the comments on it for people to see them, because it's, again, people in their 20s, people in their 50s. John Laub, who said today he remembers that Marino Bledsoe match. He watched it on his friend Brian's couch. He remembers the exact couch he was on in 1994. Like, it's a different world. Technology's eliminated nostalgia. But nostalgia is something we can never let go of, because we don't get to where we are without the history and the development of things. And I think there's a place in the market for it right now, and I'm happy to be the one tapping into it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a huge market for it. I think the more these videos are getting seen, the more you're going to have just comment after comment of people getting fired up about it. So I think it's brilliant. I'm so excited to see what comes of it. Let's dive into a few rapid fire questions before we wrap things up here. We'll just dive in. I'll throw out a question. Let me know what first comes to mind. Get to know you a little bit more here. So what are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
I've got very much into working out. I've had a love-hate relationship with working out my entire life, but I've always played sports. So the running and playing the sports have always kept me in pretty good shape. But as I've gotten a little bit older and less time to play the sports, 2 years ago, I really didn't like the amount of weight I had put on. And I was never a heavy guy, right? But I'm just about 6 foot if I'm standing up straight and the spine's not crunched. I was just about 6 foot, and I had touched 230, and 230 was too much for me. And I decided, okay, on my 49th birthday, I decided by the time I got to my 50th birthday, I wanted to be in the best health I could be in as an adult. And I did that. I got down to like 203 pounds at one point, and I had put on some muscle, which was nice. And I got really into eating healthy and the mindset of not just looking good, but living longer, right? Like, I'm 50. I'm not going to live to 100. I don't have any confusion. I'm going to live to 100, but I want to live. I want to shoot for it. I'm going to try every day to get there. So I'm going to try to do the healthy things. I want to make sure that my joints are loose and I can move and do all that stuff. So exercise, fitness, that's something I really enjoy.
Love it.
I love live music. Live music is I was between sports and being a musician when I was a kid. Those, and a lot of us have those dreams and desires, but I took bass lessons, I took guitar lessons, I sung in a garage band with a group of friends, and some of those guys are professional musicians today. One of them has been with Cirque du Soleil for 7 years, and I still get together with them when they're in town. Good group of guys. So I love going to live shows, and traveling has become a new hobby, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, when it comes to music, who's your favorite all-time band or artist?
So I love so much music, it's hard to pinpoint that. And when I was a teenager in an era, I was there when Guns N' Roses came out. Like, I seen Guns N' Roses in 1988 at Giant Stadium, not MetLife, Giant Stadium. They opened up, and Deep Purple was second, and Aerosmith closed. And that's a show, that's a historical show. So it was Guns N' Roses then, a band, and then a guy who has been with me during real formidable years of my life is Hootie and the Blowfish. And
nice.
And I've met Darius, and I actually shopped before I got involved, before I knew Scott Fishbowl, before I did Toys for Tots. I did Toys for Tots shopping with Darius Rucker. Him and me, just the two of us, maybe 2 hours in the store, talking sports, kids, family, life. It was one of the greatest days for me. And as his life is tracked and the many things that have changed in his life, they kind of correlate with my life. So I'll see him every time he's in town. I'll go watch those shows, and I love the music. I absolutely love the music. And this year I've seen Teddy Swims, who I love, Post Malone, Jelly Roll, Dave Matthews. I got tickets for Ray LaMontagne later this year, if nobody knows who he is. I listen to different genres, different eras, different styles of music. But it is funny to me that my three favorite current musicians all have tattoos on their face, which is weird. So I don't think I pinpoint one. So many.
I love it. How about an all-time favorite TV show and an all-time favorite movie?
Movie is easily Back to the Future for me. Like, it was so well done in a time, and it stands the test of time still to today. You'll never change my mind about that. If it's on, I watch it. If I come across it, I watch it. If it's 2 minutes left or 2 hours left, I finish it. I did go see it on Broadway with my daughter when it was here for the short period of time that it was on Broadway. Loved Back to the Future. And A Few Good Men is another one of my good favorite movies. Love sitcoms. I've always been a bigger fan of sitcoms than anything else. And of course, we all love Seinfeld. One show that I relate to because it's about New York life also is King of Queens. And that was one my ex-wife and I would watch a lot. So
nice.
I still watch it. I probably fall asleep to that more than any other show still till today.
Nice. Now, how about growing up in New York? What's the best part of living and New York, growing up in New York?
Yeah, I think the diversity and access to different things, right? Like I grew up on Long Island, and people tend to think, all right, well, Long Island is kind of like high end and all that stuff. Well, not all of Long Island is high end, right? Every pocket of everywhere. We were a lower middle class family. I didn't come from the North Shore, and if you're watching this in New York, the North Shore is kind of the higher end, right? And I was a South Shore kid in a town called Copiague, and even till today, people will tell you Copiague. Not the worst town on Long Island, but definitely in the bottom percentage. But what was great for me is I grew up in a mixed community. I grew up in a culturally diverse community, and I was exposed to so many things as a young man that I loved what it made me, who I grew. And I don't have a prejudice bone in my body about anything in life. And if you're going to live and breathe and exist in New York, and you're going to have those things in your life, you're not going to live and breathe and exist, right? This is the melting pot of the country for sure, and where people come from historically to make it in this world, and I hope that it gets back to where it once was. And it's slowly coming back after COVID, but just the access to things, you could get anything you need and want in New York 24 hours. And I don't know any different. This is where I come from. When I go and visit these other cities, they're amazing. And each city has that. There are these fabric of America cities, and they're amazing. But for me, my fabric is New York.
What's the best pizza spot in New York City?
It's too many to pick from. Where I live right now in Brooklyn, and I do live in Brooklyn now the last 3 years, two subway stops away is Crispy Pizza. And they have a great social media presence. If you go on there and just look them up, they They're great. They don't make a bad pie. Where I grew up, there was a place called Albert's. I used to ride my bike there when I was a single digit age. And when I'm in town, I still go. It's still there. It tastes the same. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Now, how about you mentioned travel? How about your all-time favorite vacation and a bucket list travel destination?
Any trip with my children would be my favorite. We've done Disney a handful of times, and any of those, summer road trips with the kids. Those will always be my favorite. No matter how great of a place I visit, no matter your time with your children. For me, at least, and I think for probably most people, it's just the greatest time and memories you can have. I was jealous of you. You took a recent trip to Italy. My father was born in Sicily. I have not gotten a chance to get to Italy. So Italy, the Mediterranean in general, that part of the world, I'm hoping in the next couple of years, and I want to make that trip with my children. So I want to do it when everybody's free and available, and maybe they can have a little bit of their own money to help pay for that trip. So that would be my bucket list to get
Love it.
In that area.
Yeah, highly recommended for sure. I think that'll be great. Obviously, these were all great answers. Now, before we wrap things up, what are you most grateful for? Obviously, you're mentioning family, you mentioned health. I assume there's some of that tied in there. What are you most grateful at this time?
That is 100% the first answer, right? Is first and foremost my children. They're healthy. In an early part of their lives, they've been successful. My daughter is out of college 4 years now, and she went to school to become a publicist in the film industry, and she got hired right out of college, and she went out to LA. I mean, a kid who had anxiety and stress and was scared. She moved to the other side of the country by herself, and she has absolutely killed it. She did a stint earlier this year with A24 Films. I don't think I need to tell anybody who knows anything about movies who A24 is. They are the largest independent film studio in Hollywood. She got to attend the Oscars as she was the publicist for The Brutalist, which was their biggest film in the awards shows this year. So
wow.
To see my daughter out there at 24, 25 years old doing that, amazing, proud moments. My son is a year plus out of college now. He's got his first full-time job. And then the baby, the 20-year-old who started her final year of college this past week or 2 weeks ago. The joys of my life right now is that I'm in a better place financially now than when they were growing up, as I've elevated my role in my personal professional life into the admin side, leaving blue collar. So I'm grateful to have gotten that opportunity at work. But I took the opportunity, I ran with it. And I know nothing has been handed to me, but I'm grateful that it's there. I'm grateful to get the opportunity to earn that money to support my children in the early journeys that they're taking. And now support the lifestyle of traveling and doing the stuff that I want to do. I don't take it for granted. Because of my background and how I grew up and not growing up with money and not growing up with stuff handed to me, I know and feel at all times it could be taken away from me at any time. So family, good health, and the opportunity to be able to pay for all of it. Very grateful for that.
I love it. It's perfect trifecta. Now, is there anything we didn't cover before we close things out here?
No, I mean, man, did we touch on everything? Aside from just be a good person, live and let live. We're not going to agree with everybody. I had a long conversation with my oldest daughter yesterday, and we live in a really different time in a tough country and a tough world right now. Whatever your beliefs are, I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't talk politics. I have my beliefs, and I don't try to force them down anybody's throat. But I think that if you just accept everybody for who they are, you treat everybody equal, and you know that everybody's going through something, be good to them. Because I'm not a very religious person, but I do believe that what you put out in the world, you get back. I believe in karma. I believe in giving off good energy and getting that good energy back. So, that's like my parting message. Just be a good human.
Yeah, beautiful message. I love it. Now, can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, it's at Sal Leto FF. That's the original page. That's me. But the Fantasy Football Historian is on every platform: TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and X, Twitter, as we still call it. And it's the FF Historian on every one of those, not the Fantasy Football Historian. It's the FF Historian. Every platform the same. Check it out. I'm very proud of what I'm doing. I'm grateful for the response. And for the fact that I think it's a great idea, I hope it really does continue to grow and become really big. And, check it out, please.
Nice. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sal. Loved having you on here. It was an absolute pleasure. Best of luck with the Fantasy Football Historian. It's going to be fun. Can't wait to see everything that happens with that.
Thank you, Kev. You're a great guy in the industry, and I always appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, my man.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for